recently, some of you may be aware that I went to a protest. Turns out there was this group called Church United. And they were protesting against a bill called AB 2943. Okay, AB 2943 basically says that any advertisement for curing gayness, okay, is illegal. Because every single psychological organization out there says how incredibly harmful this is, and you can't fix what ain't broken, right? So they consider this fraud. And so AB 2943, which is already actually, I think it's going through the Senate now, but it's basically passed. These people were coming out protesting that, claiming the right to choose, which I thought was interesting language in and of itself. Well, so I went to this, so there was a counter protest that was organized by the Orange County LGBTQ Center. Thank you, that's the word I'm looking for. And they were talking, there was a number of people like this gentleman here who was talking about how harmful it had been, how when he had gone through it, had been forced to do it when he was in his late teens by his parents, and he was told, oh, you're just too close to your mother and sister, so he couldn't talk to them for 2 years, and it cost his parents $35,000. You know, things like that you're just like, are you, okay, you've got to be kidding me. So we were before the other protests, so we were sort of the counter protest, and yes, that's me in a collar. When I go out, I do wear a collar. So what was interesting, so afterwards there was the protest across the street. This is actually from their point of view looking out to all of us, because a bunch of us, even though we were told to stay on our side of the street, a bunch of us kind of wandered over. Just kind of see what that would be like. Jolyn was there, Cosme and Ava Lou were there with me, and Beth was there with me. What I found fascinating is I am kind of listening to them, and they were going through the crowd beforehand as they were setting up. And there was this one gentleman, you can see him there, he's in the bright white, looking at his cell phone there on your right. And I remember him in particular was going around saying, we come in love, we come in peace, you know, we believe in the love of Jesus Christ, you know, all this sort of thing, and listening to people talking about how the love of Jesus has changed them, all that sort of thing. And I just was sort of like twerked by this, like, here they are using words like love and peace, which is, I feel like that's my vocabulary. Like, you don't get to have that. But I was thinking about it as I'm listening to them, and they were very peaceful. They did not yell or scream or anything like that. They didn't say that, you know, they didn't say anything overtly hateful, just implied things that were truly hateful. And I realized, you know, they believe their words. They believe truly that they are coming from this place of love, right? And Beth, in fact, our music director, she was there with me, and and you know, some of you know some of her issues with her parents, and she said, oh yeah, I can hear my parents saying that. You know, we want you to change because we love you. I was like, huh. So this really got me thinking about this. What is this disconnect that we have? Because I do believe that these people truly think they're being loving, right? And perhaps they even feel this sense of some sort of connection, of feeling, a sense of love toward us. But I also feel like that it's blocked by this sense of judgment and non-acceptance. In other words, their love will just go so far, right? So I was thinking about, is this just a matter of values, that they have different values than me? Is there something else going on here? And I've been thinking about this a lot. I think there is something else that's going on here. And I wanted to start me thinking about, what exactly is love? Are we talking about the same thing? This kind of shallow love, I feel, is not enough. It's not enough. So the problem with the word love is that it's lost much of its meaning, right? We say, oh, I love pizza, or I love that movie, right? It means that we enjoyed it, we liked it very much, but it's momentary, and we're talking about something that's pleasurable. We often mix up this idea of love and pleasure. It's not exactly the same thing. So then I turn to people who have theologians who talked all about this a lot, right? There are people like the Catholics. So the Catholics, they first came up with 3 different types of love. The agape love, which is the universal love of God, the highest form of love, they called it. And then there's philia, which is that between friends. And then there's eros, which is more sexual attraction kind of love, that kind of thing. And then, of course, you had storge, which C.S. Lewis had to throw that one in there, which is parental love. And then everybody added a whole bunch of others, different types, self-love, all that sort of thing down there. I thought it was just sort of interesting. And I thought, these protesters think that what they're feeling is an agape kind of love, right? Oh, well, we just love everybody. We're just going to love everyone. Lord knows I talk about that. But I realize it's not a very deep kind of love. And this kind of shallow agape kind of love is just, it acknowledges that, okay, yes, you're a fellow human being. Maybe even something a little bit sacred, but nothing more. It's not going to acknowledge anything more. And I begin to suspect that the issue around how someone can talk about love, but then act in a way that feels dissonant, right? It's like that idea of thoughts and prayers. Oh, our thoughts and prayers are with you, right? It isn't about a type of love. It's about the depth of the love. So this is what I came up with. This is Sean's Theology on Love 101. Okay? So we're going to talk about depth of love. That there's sort of shallow love. And these are my words and my definitions. You do not have to keep them. But this is how I kind of think of it. There is a shallow kind of love. And I've noticed that hate is not up here. I'm talking about people who truly feel something there. And the first level would be something like sympathy, right? It's a feeling of pity for sorrow of someone, but you're not bought into necessarily what they're thinking, right? Maybe it's just you've never had that experience. You might go, oh yeah, it's really sorry that your car broke down, but what are you going to do? Sorry. You can only really sympathize. But then empathy is that ability to know what someone else is feeling like. Oh man, I hate that when your car breaks down. Oh, it's just, yeah. So you're feeling what they're feeling. Then compassion, I feel, is a little bit different from empathy. Some people might disagree with me, that's cool. I think of compassion as someone where it's empathy, but you're now drawn to action. How can I help you change your tire? Okay? And then true love. It goes even further than that. It's a depth of feeling with with the pain that they are feeling, you're there for them, you're going to be there through them. I'm going to go with you to the garage to get that done, to get that tire changed for you. Not just call, but I'm going to be with you the whole way. And I put an example up here of, so a sympathy might be someone sort of like a level of acquaintance versus a friend versus a good friend, and then there's your BFF, right? So, and I've noticed this about myself, that I feel compassion for a lot of people, but that BFF thing it's deeper, right? And of course, most of us have these different levels with various people, whether it's your work acquaintances or people that you know at the grocery store, maybe you have sympathy for them or even some empathy. But this going deeper requires a certain amount of connection that we've made with one another. We carry around all of these. I think it's the great saints of our history that were able to go deeper into these levels for more people than most of us can imagine. So for me, it's about this level of connection that you make with someone. The deeper the connection, the deeper the love. I think that the problem is that sometimes some people who talk about love stay at the shallow end of this love pool. In fact, they don't want to go any deeper, to make deeper connections. And why? Because if they do, they might actually have to change. Because when we love deeply, we are changed. I call this desire to not go deep, this desire to stay in the shallow end, I call it the Oprah Winfrey effect. And I apologies to Oprah Winfrey, who I really deeply admire and love the woman. But I noticed that I used to watch her show, and she's very into self-improvement, and every week she would have something new on self-improvement, right? And I remember realizing, what can you do in 45 minutes? Or 20 minutes in a sermon, right? I remember Eckhart Tolle, for example, was on there once, and I remember it took him years to reach enlightenment, right? But hey, if you read his book, then maybe that'll do it. You don't have to do any of the hard work of opening up or doing anything like that. I think that's what sometimes people think, if I just read a book, then I'm fine. We don't actually have to go deeper than that. If we stay at the shallow end of our pool our whole lives, then we don't have to change. And what does it take to go deeper, to make connections, to love more deeply? You know, it's very interesting. I have this friend of mine. I'll put her on the friend level. She's Mormon. I'll call her Christina. Christina, I know that she and I get along really well. We work really well together on the Interfaith Council and really like her. One time she invited me over to her house I was helping her out with something, and she got talking. She immediately turned it to the LGBTQ issue because she knows that her church does not support LGBTQ community, whereas it's a deep passion of mine to support the LGBTQ community. And she was really struggling with that. And I remember her sort of looking at me kind of pleadingly, right? My church tells me that, you know, marriage is between a man and a woman, and maybe that'll change someday. I could tell she was trying to make a connection with me deeper. She wants me to understand her. And her desire to love more deeply, to go deeper into that, which her faith calls her to do, actually. And it's asking her to change, though. And she's caught in this quagmire, right? She's starting to empathize, but she can't quite get to compassion. I thought it was very fascinating to watch the struggle in her as I'm sitting there going, yeah, and I'm trying to be empathetic, and I can understand that must be a struggle for you with your faith tells you this, but what do you think? And she kept falling back to her faith. Well, my church says this, but hopefully that'll change. So she herself wants it to change, but she can't say it. I thought it was just a very interesting thing. You know, Oprah and I can do so much, right? As I'm putting myself up there with Oprah. But I do believe the rest is really, it's up to everyone else to do that harder, deeper work. Because you can talk about love all you want, but if you want to go deeper, we have to make those connections with people, real connections with people that you don't necessarily know or don't necessarily agree with. And we may have to change in that. And I think that's why people are so upset about this hypocrisy of our thoughts and prayers are with you, right? It sounds like you care, but it's so shallow, it's not even helpful. There's no depth to it, especially if a politician who has power to do something says my thoughts and prayers are with you, right? Yeah, put that into action, please. Because if you pray, like what our woman was describing today in our reading, if you truly pray, it should move you to listen deeply as to what's going on. And to go one step further into empathy or into compassion. This is prayer at its best, when we take the things revealed in tender moments and translate it into action. You have to be open to those tender moments. Or put it another way, by Martin Luther King Jr., he said, power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. That's exactly how people think of thoughts and prayers, is sentimental and anemic. But it doesn't have to be. Our reading, the problem is not thoughts and prayers. It's not allowing the thoughts and prayers to change us, to drive us into action, to drive us into a deeper love. And it means that we have to then connect with people different from us on a deeper level, moving from sympathy and just acknowledgement of someone to empathy and then to compassion. You know, another cool thing that I did recently on Friday afternoon, I was talking to a bunch of students up at Chapman University. And they're from this organization called HOBE, okay? HOBE, it stands for the Hugh O'Brien Youth Leadership Project or something like that. And it's basically this wonderful organization that takes high school students, brings them together, and empowers them to change the world. And I asked some of the students there as I was getting ready for this panel discussion. They had an interfaith panel of people there, and said, what is it that you like about HOBE? How would you describe HOBE to people? And one woman said, home. It feels like home. And I talked to one of the other young women there, and she said, you know, this is a chance where we get to open up. We're all come here, we don't know anybody, and we open up to one another. And we make friendships here that last a lifetime, and we are transformed. It's like, wow, that sounds really cool. Well, it turns out part of what that comes from is that Hugh O'Brien, I found out, so this is Hugh O'Brien. He was a movie star. And he started Wyatt Earp and some television. Some of you who may be older, whatever. Doesn't he look like a movie star? I mean, such a typical. What a great smile. He was a movie star, and he'd long heard about Dr. Albert Schweitzer, and he thought, wow, this guy's really cool. He wrote to him and said, could I come visit you? And Albert Schweitzer said, yeah, sure, come on down. So it was about 1957 or so, 1957, 58, and so he took all the planes and the boats to get to Albert Schweitzer, and Schweitzer, who was 83 at the time, talked to him and said, I believe in humanity and I believe in helping others, and talked about the future and that how, his vision of peace for the world, and that it began with the youth and all this sort of thing. At the very end of this, as O'Brien was about to leave, Schweitzer then asked him, so what are you going to do with all of this? And 2 weeks after returning, he started Hobie in 1958. And that's love. It's a deeper kind of love beyond the Oprah Winfrey effect kind of love. I remember also on this Hobie panel, so we had a bunch of people from different faith traditions. There was a woman from the Muslim faith, and I remember a student asked her, what can we do to help the Islamophobia out there in the world? Which was a really exciting question. I was like, and she replied, go meet some Muslims. Talk to Muslims. Ask questions. Get to know us. In other words, connect, go deeper. Now, Mary Oliver once said, what will you do with this one wild and precious life? Will you live it in safety in the shallows, or will you wade into deeper waters of love? I think about our church and that abbey, right, from the Time for All Ages story. I believe that we're growing because I believe we're living love in the world. And the more we show it, the deeper we go with one another, the more people are hungry for a depth, that kind of love they can't get elsewhere. I believe that the reason people are leaving in droves from churches across the nation is that people are tired of the hypocrisy that talks about love but acts contrary, that stays in the shallow end. People want depth. I love that song, There's a River Flowing in My Soul. I believe that song. There's a river of love that flows through each one of us. It's like we need to tap into it somehow. And if you just sort of get on board on that river, ride it, down on a kayak, we'd be in for a wild ride. Because it's not easy opening ourselves up to this. It means letting go of fears and prejudices, ones we may not even know that we have. Love is supposed to ruin us, right? To change us, to give us courage. Let me be ruined by love. Make it crack and melt the hard places where I am so sure of myself. Make it stiffen and enliven the weak places where I am uncertain, ignorant, and secretly afraid. When is love not enough? When it doesn't melt those hard places where we are so sure of ourselves. When it doesn't stiffen and enliven the weak places when we're uncertain, ignorant, and secretly afraid. Shallow love is not enough. Only a deeper love, one that calls us out to us, one that's going to call to us. It's going to change this world. I believe that river of love, it does call to us. It asks us to go deeper, to swim in deeper waters, to do more, to be more. And why? Because this world desperately needs that deeper kind of love. If we stay in the shallows, we're never going to grow, not as a person, not as a church, not as a nation. So please, my friends, let us answer the call of love.